my full sister, and I fought over Wei Heng for 10 years. In my first life, I got my wish and married him. After the wedding, everyone said he was madly in love with me, which was why I bore him 6 sons in 7 years. As I was giving birth to the 7th, he chose to save the child and sacrifice the mother, forcing 3 bowls of deadly poison down my throat. Only before I closed my eyes did he tell me the truth. The one I wanted to marry back then was never you. Since you were so eager, you deserve to be nothing more than a birthing tool. Now that there are enough children, you have no more value. I died filled with hatred. In my second life, I pushed the marriage proposal to my sister. You go, it's you he loves. I thought this time, everyone would be happy. Unexpectedly, 5 years later, a maidservant delivered a large water urn. Inside was my sister, her limbs all severed. Her arms and legs were gone, as were her eyes, but her voice was as clear and crisp as ever. She wailed at me. Sister, Wei Heng doesn't love me at all. It wasn't me he wanted to marry. He said the only thing I had going for me was my voice, so he made me sing for him day and night. If I complained even once, he would torture me. Last night, he said he was tired of listening to my songs. If my maid hadn't risked her life to save me, I would never have made it back. But my sister's injuries were too severe. She died less than 2 months after returning home. When I opened my eyes again, it was my third life. Looking at the marriage proposal from the Wei family, my sister and I stared at each other in bewilderment. Who on earth did this man want to marry? My mother, looking at the proposal with no name on it, was just as confused as we were. She cautiously ventured, "Is the young Marquis asking for Kingsai's hand? I am Shen Kingsai." The reason my mother thought of me first was because Wei Heng and I were childhood sweethearts. Everyone thought we were a match made in heaven. I used to think so too. But now, I understood everything. I was not the one in Wei Heng's heart. While I was lost in thought, Wei Heng had already nodded, calmly uttering a single word. Acceptable. Now my mother was even more baffled. She frowned slightly and said, "Young Marquis, you could answer yes or no. What is acceptable supposed to mean?" Wei Heng's expression remained unchanged. "I mean, I find it acceptable to marry Kingsai." I finally snapped back to reality and refused without hesitation. I will not marry him. The nightmare of my first life was still seared into my mind. Back then, Wei Heng had given my mother the same answer. But I had mistaken it for shyness, a subtle expression of his love for me. Afraid of embarrassing him, I had urged my mother to agree without a second thought. For 8 years after marrying into the Wei family, nothing seemed amiss. The only thing I found overwhelming was the constant pregnancies. Wei Heng would coax me, saying he loved children and wanted the Marquis's manor to be full of life, so he gave me no chance to breathe. Every time my month of postpartum recovery ended, he would start again. Just like that, I gave birth to 6 sons in 7 years. Gradually, the people in the capital went from praising my fertility to envying the passionate love between Wei Heng and me. Influenced by public opinion, I naturally came to believe that Wei Heng must love me deeply to want so many children with me. Until the winter of the 8th year. After giving birth to my 7th son, my weakened body suffered a postpartum hemorrhage. The physicians were doing their best to save me, but Wei Heng suddenly waved them away. Before I could ask why, he personally forced 3 bowls of deadly poison down my throat. As I lay dying, he finally let me die with the truth. "Kingsai, I don't love you. You were the one eager to marry me. I simply didn't want to defy fate. Now 7 children are enough. You, the birthing tool, have no more value. Go in peace." My heart filled with unwillingness. Enduring the excruciating pain in my organs, I cried, begging for an answer. Wei Heng hesitated for a moment, then said, "Fine, I'll tell you. The one I truly love is your." But before I could hear the rest, I took my last breath. The pain of my first life made my whole body tremble, but it also cleared my mind. I hardened my tone, speaking word by word. "Mother, I will not marry him." My mother had watched me grow up. She knew how much I adored Wei Heng. When he went to the battlefield for the first time, I waited for him at the border for a whole month. When he returned injured, I cared for him day and night for half a month. Mother said it would damage a young lady's reputation, but I didn't care. I just wanted him to be well. So my mother was confused. "Kingsai, didn't you used to say you would marry no one but the young Marquis? This is such a wonderful opportunity." I shook my head firmly. "Those were the foolish words of my youth, they don't count. Besides, I already have someone in my heart. He will be coming to propose soon." My mother was shocked and shot me a harsh glare, as if scolding me for not saying so sooner. She turned back to Wei Heng with an apologetic smile. Young Marquis, there's nothing to be done if Kingsai is unwilling. How about King Yin? She is also very fond of you. Shen King Yin, who had been silent all this time, shuddered and shook her head forcefully. Mother, I won't marry him either. My mother's brows shot up as she scolded. And what is wrong with you? King Yin glanced at me and stammered. I also have someone in my heart. He will be coming to propose soon, too. After our father's death, our mother had been the head of the household. Though she was usually strict, she loved us sisters from the bottom of her heart. Seeing that neither of us was willing, she didn't want to force us. So she returned the marriage proposal to Wei Heng, her face full of guilt. My apologies, young Marquis. My daughters have their own ideas, and as their mother, I can't force their hand. Perhaps you could look at some other families. Perhaps feeling he had lost face, Wei Heng, who had been calm until now, grew annoyed. He blurted out, "No. The person I marry must come from your family." He then slammed the proposal down on the table and turned to leave. As he left behind a single sentence. "I'll give you 3 days to decide who will marry me. If you can't choose, I'll simply draw lots and request an imperial decree for the marriage." Only the 3 of us remained in the room. My mother, anxious, gave us a push. "The old Marquis and the Empress are cousins. A marriage decree is just a matter of a word from Her Majesty. You two, hurry up and get your sweethearts to come propose. It will be too late if you delay." Shen Qingyan and I stared at each other. All these years, we had fought tooth and nail over Wei Heng, never paying any mind to other men. The men who had once admired us were either already married or had their hearts broken. Where were we supposed to conjure up sweethearts willing to marry us on such short notice? My mother noticed our strange behavior and asked with a frown, "You two weren't just making that up, were you?" Seeing we could no longer hide it, we told our mother everything about our 3 lives. It took a long time for our mother to accept it. She held our hands, tears streaming down her face. Indeed, what mother wouldn't feel heartbroken and pained to hear that her eldest daughter was poisoned to death and her youngest was turned into a human torso? So, who is it that the young Marquis truly loves? And why is he so insistent on marrying one of you? I shook my head in confusion, saying guiltily, "I died too quickly to hear." I turned my gaze to my sister. She also replied helplessly, "I have no idea. Wei Heng never said a word about it to me." After a long and stressful day, we finally decided to split up. Mother would go out and see if she could find anyone willing to marry us. Shen Qingyan was in charge of investigating all the women in our household to see if any had a connection to Wei Heng. And I, being the most familiar with Wei Heng's character, was tasked with sounding him out. When I saw Wei Heng again, he was in his study painting. It was a portrait of a woman, but without any facial features. When he saw me approach and ask, he calmly put down his brush. He smiled, as perfectly as ever. "Can't you tell? I'm painting you, of course." A pang of pain shot through my heart. Wei Heng loved to paint portraits of women without faces, in red, green, or white robes, playing an instrument, dancing, or reading a book. Every time I asked, he would say it was me. He didn't paint the features because I was the most beautiful in his heart, and no brush could capture it. I would always be overjoyed to hear this, and never question the strangeness of it. Now, with a changed heart, I noticed the anomaly in the details. The woman in the portrait had a small mole on the right side of her neck. I did not. I dropped the pretense and got straight to the point. "Wei Heng, this isn't me, is it? I don't have a mole on my right neck." Wei Heng's back stiffened, a rare sight. When he recovered, he looked up at me and asked, "Kingsai, do you really want to know who she is?" I held my breath, waiting intently for his next words. But he changed the subject. "Silly girl, it really is you. That on your neck isn't a mole, just a stray drop of ink. You know how I've treated you since we were children, don't you?" For a moment, I was speechless. Wei Heng had indeed treated me very well. The old Marquis and my father were the closest of friends, and we had been inseparable since we could remember. As a child, I was playful and disliked studying, often sneaking out of lessons. Every time my parents were about to punish me, Wei Heng would rush over to protect me. He would promise my parents that he would personally teach me everything I had missed. I always escaped punishment because of him, and he wasn't just saying it. He truly sacrificed his own time, staying up late to tutor me. He even secretly studied the precepts for women to explain them to me. I once teased him, a 7-foot man, for studying such things. He sighed and told me he was afraid I would be criticized in the future. That time, a strange warmth bloomed in my heart. It was then that I suddenly thought it would be wonderful to marry him. Later, for his sake, I became obedient and reigned in my wild nature. I truly became a proper lady of a noble family. Standing by his side, I would always hear others praise us as a match made in heaven. Even the Empress was very pleased with me, repeatedly telling him to treat me well. He took her words to heart and treated me better and better. When I was sick, he would stay by my side day and night, boiling water and brewing medicine himself. When others bullied me, he would always be the first to stand up for me, regardless of who they were. Even for our wedding, he prepared a dowry that stretched for miles, saying he didn't want anyone to look down on me. Such a good person, I truly couldn't understand when he had changed. A lump of bitterness rose in my throat, pulling me back to the present. I rubbed my nose and asked in a muffled voice, "Wei Heng, if you truly have me in your heart, why didn't you write my name clearly on the marriage proposal?" Wei Heng was slightly taken aback. "Kingsai, you and King Yin have been fighting over me for years. The whole city knows." I didn't specify a name because I was afraid of hurting her pride. She is your sister, after all. I thought that if you accepted the proposal first, she would feel better about it. Unfortunately, I didn't expect you to misunderstand me over this and reject me in a fit of pique. In truth, both Wei Heng and I knew that Shen Qingyan didn't like him that much. What Shen Qingyan liked was the feeling of competing with me. As children, she fought for food, clothes, and our parents' affection. When she grew older and found that boring, she started fighting for the person I liked. My days made Wei Heng think I was wavering. He pressed his advantage. "So, Kingsai, I've made up my mind. The person I've always wanted to marry is you. In 3 days, I will come to propose to you directly and stop these confusing gestures. Will you forgive me this once? After we're married, I'll make your favorite lotus seed cakes for you every day. How about that?" Looking at his sincere expression, I fought back tears and said with a choke in my voice, "All right, I'll give you one more chance. But let's forget the proposal. King Yin will cause a scene if she finds out. In 3 days, just come to escort the bride." Wei Heng let out a long sigh of relief, looking as if he had recovered something precious. Back home, Shen Qingyan and my mother were stunned when they heard the story. Shen Qingyan, contrary to her usual self, didn't argue with me but instead slapped me across the face. "Shen Kingsai, can you wake up? You're still going to marry a man like that. Wasn't the suffering in your first life enough for you?" For the first time, I wasn't angry with Shen Qingyan. Instead, I calmly stitched my wedding dress and said, "I have to marry him. But the one getting married won't be me." Shen Qingyan froze, her brow furrowed slightly. She asked me uneasily, "You're not thinking of making me marry him, are you?" "Sister, we're full sisters. We may fight, but I've never wanted to harm you. If you dare to set me up, I will really turn on you." I rolled my eyes at her. "What are you thinking? Last life, I let you marry him because I thought he liked you. Now that I know what happened to you, how could I harm you again? Shen Qingyan, you underestimate me." Shen Qingyan finally breathed a sigh of relief and continued, "Then do you mean to have a maid marry in your place?" I still shook my head. Wei Heng is an arrogant man. If he didn't love her, why would he ever look at a maid? Shen Qingyan deflated, saying in frustration, "Not this, not that. What on earth are you planning? Besides us and the maids, who else is there to marry him?" I looked up at my mother and said softly, "Mother." My mother recoiled in horror, waving her hands frantically. "I can't do it. I'm old enough to be Wei Heng's mother." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "No, I need you to do me a favor. I think I know who the person in Wei Heng's heart is." In fact, I hadn't realized it at first. Wei Heng's act was flawless. Anyone would have believed he was sincere with me. But his last sentence gave him away. My favorite snack was not lotus seed cake at all. On the contrary, I had always hated the taste of lotus seeds. But he did remind me that there was indeed someone in the Shen manor who was particularly fond of lotus seed cakes. And before I returned, I had specifically gone to confirm that this person did indeed have a small mole on the right side of her neck. So I had a plan. Instead of getting into an endless struggle with Wei Heng that might reach the palace, it was better to pretend to agree and then present him with a fait accompli. I leaned in and whispered my instructions in my mother's ear. She immediately left to make the preparations. Shen Qingyan slumped over the table and asked with a self-deprecating laugh, "Sister, we fought for so many years, only to lose to someone like that. Are you content with this?" I smiled calmly. "Of course, there's some bitterness. But more than that, I want to avenge you and me from our past 2 lives." Shen Qingyan linked her arm with mine, the first time she had ever been so close to me. "All right, sister, let's stop fighting. This time, we sisters will wait and watch them become a laughingstock." Qingyan wasn't just speaking out of anger. For that person to marry him would in itself be a colossal joke. Didn't Wei Heng love her the most, want to marry her the most? I wanted to see just how Wei Heng would handle the situation when she was actually delivered to him. The day before Wei Heng was to escort the bride, my mother brought two men home. I recognized them. They were the Grand Secretary's twin sons. My mother told us excitedly, "My daughters, I've run my legs off, but I've finally found men willing to marry you. The two young masters of the Lin family. Family, good character, and most importantly, they have both admired you for a long time. What do you think?" King Yin and I were momentarily stunned. My mother whispered, "Agree quickly. The Empress is the young Marquis's cousin. If he finds out we've tricked him and made him lose face, he'll definitely cause a scene. When that happens, the only one who can speak up for us, besides His Majesty, is Grand Secretary Lin." King Yin and I no longer cared whether we liked them or not. We agreed to the two marriages in unison. The marriage certificates were exchanged on the spot. Holding the certificate, the great weight in my heart finally lifted. I took King Yin's hand and said, "Let's go. Time to send the bride off." Wei Heng made each of us suffer for a lifetime. This time, it's his turn. The next day, King Yin and my mother saw the bride, her face covered by a red veil, into the bridal sedan. Wei Heng bid my mother farewell with a forced smile, taking one last look at the Shen manor before he left. His gaze was filled with restrained pain and longing. I gave a scornful smile. "Wei Heng, don't be sad. In this life, you have finally married the person you wanted to marry, yet could not." The next morning, King Yin and I went out to buy some new jewelry for our upcoming weddings. Halfway there, I grew tired and sat down at a small tea stall to wait for King Yin. Suddenly, two fierce-looking men appeared. Without a word, they covered my mouth and dragged me away. I struggled desperately. Annoyed by the commotion, they simply knocked me unconscious. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the Wei manor. Wei Heng sat alone on the wedding bed, his eyes blazing as he stared at me, his voice as cold as winter ice. "Shen Kingsai, explain yourself." Although I was prepared for this, his stare made my scalp tingle. I forced myself to remain calm. "Explain what?" "The young Marquis proposed, but he never specified to whom, so it shouldn't matter who marries him, right?" Before I could finish, Wei Heng rushed over in 3 steps and pinned me against the door. His eyes were red and swollen, and he looked like he wanted to eat me alive. "Shen Kingsai, no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't joke about your marriage. Switching the bride on the wedding day to make a fool of me, is that fun for you?" I sniffed the air, catching the ambiguous scent lingering in the room. I pointed to the messy bed and sneered. From the looks of it, wasn't the young Marquis enjoying himself quite a bit? "You." Wei Heng seemed to feel a pang of guilt. The words caught in his throat, and he was momentarily speechless. After a long pause, he finally found a suitable excuse. "The red candles had burned out last night. It was pitch black. How was I supposed to know the bride had been switched?" I laughed in contempt, exposing his lie. "This room is filled with the scent of lotus. I imagine it's the perfume worn by the new bride, isn't it? The young Marquis has known me for many years. Surely you know I never use such a fragrance. If you ask me, it's not that the young Marquis didn't know the bride was switched. It's that you found this new bride to be quite satisfactory, am I right?" Wei Heng froze. Before he could speak, the guilt in his eyes had already answered my question. I shook my head mockingly and pushed him away. "Since the young Marquis is so satisfied, then please stop pestering me. From now on, live a good life with your new bride." I quickly stepped out of the room, wanting to leave this nauseating place as soon as possible. But Wei Heng pulled me back in again. His tone was firm and domineering. "You must stay. In a moment, you will come with me to serve tea to my parents, and we will all pretend it was you who married me yesterday." I was stunned for a moment, then laughed out of sheer anger. Only the young Marquis could think of something so absurd. Putting aside whether I would agree, by doing this, aren't you being unfair to the new bride who spent the night with you? Pain flashed in Wei Heng's eyes, his tone filled with reluctance. "I am being unfair to her, but if people find out I married her, the Marquis's manor will never be able to hold its head high again. Kingsai, the position of the main wife must still be yours. As for her, I will compensate her in other ways in the future." I had always thought Wei Heng was desperately in love with the person in his heart. But after hearing these words, I finally understood that the one he loved most had always been himself. Just as I was about to refuse, the old Marquis and the Marquise entered the courtyard. The Marquise lovingly took my hand. "Kingsai, you must have been exhausted last night. Mother knew you wouldn't be able to get up this morning to serve us tea, so I came to see you myself." The Marquise smoothed my hair, which which Wei Heng had disheveled, looking at me as if I were her own daughter. "This is wonderful. Your father and I have waited for this day for so long. You're finally my daughter-in-law." I pulled my wrist from her grasp and took 2 steps back, creating distance between us. I curtsied respectfully but distantly. "Lord Marquis, my lady, you are mistaken. I am not your daughter-in-law." "Shen Kingsai, don't talk nonsense," Wei Heng roared. The old Marquis and the Marquise looked at each other for a long moment before the Marquise awkwardly tried to smooth things over. "Oh, the young couple is having a fight. It's all right, we'll leave first. You two talk it out. You're husband and wife now. There's nothing you can't work through." The Marquise was about to pull the old Marquis away. I stopped them. "Lord Marquis, my lady, I am not speaking nonsense out of anger. Last night, Grand Secretary Lin and his wife happened to be dining at my home, and I was with them the entire time. If you don't believe me, you can go and ask the Grand Secretary yourself." The old Marquis and the Marquise were completely stunned. The Marquise muttered to herself, "That's not right. The maid said there was a lot of activity in the bridal chamber all night. If it wasn't you, then who was Hanger with?" I raised an eyebrow at Wei Heng. "Young Marquis, you'd better confess. If we really have to bring the Grand Secretary here, it will be even more embarrassing for you." Wei Heng shot me a fierce glare, but facing the sharp gazes of the old Marquis and the Marquise, he had no choice but to deflate. He turned and went back into the room. When he came out, there was a woman by his side. Seeing Wei Heng and the woman holding hands tightly, the old Marquis frowned. "Who is she?" Wei Heng's gaze darted around as he stammered. "She. Her name is Meng Royan. She is the Shen family's." Seeing him unable to speak, I couldn't help but finish for him. "Sister Meng is a sister my mother recently acknowledged. She has been registered under my grandmother's name and is now my grandmother's adopted daughter." The Marquise looked confused. "Kingsai, I visit your mother often. I've never heard her mention adopting a sister. And this girl looks young enough to be your older sister. Why would your mother adopt her as a sworn sister?" I smiled awkwardly, because Aunt Meng's status was truly not suitable for her to be my sister. The Marquise still didn't understand, but the old Marquis's face grew darker and darker. After a long moment, he looked up at Meng Royan and said, "When old Shen was alive, I heard him mention your name once after drinking. Tell me the truth, who are you? And what is your relationship with old Shen?" Meng Royan's face turned red and then white. She was utterly unable to speak. Seeing this, I pretended to help her out. "Lord Marquis, what was between my father and my stepmother is all in the past. Please don't pursue it any further." The young Marquis likes her. His study is full of her portraits. In a way, it's a story of lovers finally getting together. "Shen Kingsai, shut your mouth." Wei Heng knew I was fanning the flames, and his face instantly turned crimson with rage. But before he could continue, the old Marquis let out another sharp reprimand. "Wei Heng, you're the one who should shut up. Men, search the young master's study and bedroom. Bring me all the portraits. I want to see for myself if what Kingsai says is true." The Marquise collapsed to the ground with a thud. Stepmother. "Kingsai, is this Miss Meng your father's replacement wife, who never showed her face?" I quickly waved my hands. "My lady, don't worry too much. My mother and the Shen clan elders have already arranged for Aunt Meng's dismissal. She is no longer my stepmother, just my mother's sworn sister. She is free to marry." This was what I had asked my mother to help with. Upon hearing this, the Marquise cried even harder. At the same time, the servants brought in several chests of portraits. Looking at the featureless paintings, Wei Heng found an excuse to argue. Mother, don't listen to Shen Kingsai's nonsense. She has had a change of heart and doesn't want to marry me, so she's deliberately framing me. In truth, all these portraits are of her." The old Marquis and the Marquise looked at the faceless portraits, unsure of who was telling the truth. At this stalemate, a servant brought another painting. "My lord, I accidentally bumped into a hidden compartment in the young master's study and found another painting inside, so I brought it over." The old Marquis unrolled the scroll, took one look, and immediately rolled it back up. Then, his old face flushed red as he looked at Wei Heng in fury. "And how do you explain this painting?" Wei Heng's face turned deathly pale. I wasn't surprised, because I already knew what was in the painting. When I went to the study that day to sound Wei Heng out, I had noticed the hidden compartment. After leaving, I bribed the servant who had just delivered the painting. He took a gold ingot from me, found an opportunity to sneak into the study, and later told me the contents of the painting. That's right, it was an erotic painting. An erotic painting of Wei Heng and Meng Royan. Only then did I know that they had been having a secret affair for a long time. But due to the ethical taboo, they couldn't be together openly. That was why Wei Heng was so insistent on marrying a daughter of the Shen family. It was so he could frequently visit the Shen manor and meet with Meng Ruoyan. With this leverage, my mother did as I said, taking Meng Ruoyan's only brother hostage to force her to marry in my place. That was why Meng Ruoyan had been so cooperative during the wedding procession. This time, the old Marquis and the Marquise had no choice but to believe it. The Marquise beat her chest. What a sin! My perfectly good son, how did he let his mind be bewitched by such a vixen? My lord, what are we to do? If this gets out, not only will Henger be disgraced, but our Marquis' manor will never be able to hold its head high again. Wei Heng knew there was no point in arguing. He dropped to his knees with a thud. Father, mother, you know how serious this is. Don't be so quick to blame me. Just listen to me. Detain Shen Kingsai. The bride was veiled yesterday anyway. No one knows who it was. As long as our family insists that the bride was Shen Kingsai, no one can say otherwise, right? The old Marquis hesitated, but Kingsai said she was dining with Grand Secretary Lin and his wife yesterday. Wei Heng said urgently, Father, we can personally visit the Grand Secretary and persuade him. He's never liked to meddle in other people's affairs. Besides, he won't turn against us and offend the Empress for a mere Shen Kingsai. The Marquise's attitude changed in an instant. My lord, what Henger says makes sense. Protecting the manor's reputation is the most important thing. The old Marquis pondered for a moment and sighed helplessly. I suppose that's the only way. I was utterly disappointed, not just with Wei Heng, but with the old Marquis and the Marquise as well. The old Marquis and my father were sworn brothers, and the Marquise and my mother were close. They always said they treated me like their own daughter. But when it came to this, they still chose to twist the truth and confound right and wrong. It seemed their entire family was cut from the same cloth. They could be good to you, but when their own interests were at stake, they would sacrifice you without a second thought, regardless of your innocence. I had originally thought that if they handled this properly, the matter would end here. But now, it seemed a peaceful resolution was impossible. So I stood up, pretending to leave. All right, I don't have time to waste with you. I'm going home. But the old Marquis commanded sternly, Men, stop her. My lady, Henger and I will go to the Lin residence to see the Grand Secretary. You must keep a close watch on Kingsai until we return. I pretended to curse loudly in anger, but I never told them that I was about to become the Lin family's young mistress. Indeed, if they didn't tell the Grand Secretary this themselves, how would I get their confession as evidence? I watched the receding figures of the Wei father and son, shook my head in pity, and sighed. What happened next was up to fate. If their conscience pricked them halfway and they returned to release me, they would at most suffer some damage to their reputation. But if they remained obstinate, I feared not even the Empress could save the Wei family. In the end, the Wei father and son chose the path of no return. When they returned, their faces were flushed with excitement. Mother, we've told the Grand Secretary everything. As expected, he doesn't want to get involved. He said we should handle it ourselves. Now, all that's left is Lady Shen. The Marquise breathed a sigh of relief, saying confidently, I'll go talk to Lady Shen. But tonight, you must consummate the marriage with Kingsai. That will make my argument stronger. Lady Shen dotes on her daughter. If she knows her daughter's virtue has been compromised, she will surely compromise for the sake of her reputation. You're right, mother, I'll go now. I couldn't help but curse him as a beast. But his words did make me panic. I had expected them to torture me. I didn't run because I was prepared for physical pain. But I had never considered consummation. I thought the Marquis' manor, as a noble house, wouldn't stoop to such shamelessness. In the end, I had overestimated them. Wei Heng pushed me onto the wedding bed where he and Meng Ruoyan had tumbled. I seemed to smell that disgusting scent again and couldn't help but gag. Wei Heng sneered, Kingsai, don't be disgusted. Didn't you bring this upon yourself? If you had just married me properly yesterday, none of this would have happened. Wei Heng pinned both my wrists with one hand and tore at my outer robe with the other. He was too strong, I was powerless to resist. I was in utter despair. Just as I thought my innocence was lost, a commotion erupted at the door. The door was kicked open. My sister, who couldn't even truss a chicken, was holding a longsword, pointing it shakily at Wei Heng. Let my sister go, or I'll kill you. Wei Heng scoffed and knocked the sword from her hand. Shen Qingyan, with your pathetic skills, you think you can threaten me. Let me tell you, your sister is my properly wedded wife. We are consummating our marriage. What business is it of yours? Bah, King Yin's voice trembled with rage. Wei Heng, have some shame. You know perfectly well who you brought through that door. Wei Heng sneered. Shen King Yin, you need proof to make accusations. If you think I didn't marry your sister, then show me your witness and evidence. Wei Heng was certain that the Grand Secretary, his only witness, would not get involved, so he spoke with great confidence. But as soon as the words left his mouth, the smile froze on his face. Grand Secretary Lin entered, his hands behind his back, his expression grim. Young Marquis, isn't this witness myself right here? Wei Heng and the newly arrived old Marquis and Marquise stared at each other. The old Marquis was the first to recover, saying with an apologetic smile, Grand Secretary Lin, didn't we already agree? Grand Secretary Lin took a step back, putting distance between himself and the old Marquis in disgust. Using a woman's innocence to secure one's own interests and reputation is something I cannot do. What's more, the person you have slandered, the person your son just attempted to rape, is my daughter-in-law. The three members of the Wei family looked as if they had been struck by lightning, frozen in place for a long moment. Wei Heng's lips trembled as he asked in disbelief, Grand Secretary, are you mistaken? When did Shen Qingsai become your daughter-in-law? Grand Secretary Lin approached, took out a marriage certificate, and held it up to Wei Heng's face. Look closely. The Lin and Shen families have already exchanged marriage certificates. Now tell me, is Qingsai my daughter-in-law or not? Wei Heng was stunned for a long time before he thought of another argument. Since the Grand Secretary and the Shen family are in-laws, His Majesty will likely not trust your testimony. You are second only to the Emperor. It would be easy for you to find a better daughter-in-law. Why don't we just proceed as we discussed before? That way, you won't have to offend Her Majesty the Empress, right? Wei Heng's tone was half persuasion, half threat. But Grand Secretary Lin wasn't buying it. I anticipated the young Marquis would say that. So, I brought someone else with me. When Wei Heng saw the eunuch behind the Grand Secretary, the color drained from his face. The eunuch stepped forward, flicked his horsetail whisk, and said coldly, Young Marquis, when His Majesty heard the Grand Secretary's words, he was initially skeptical. So he sent me to accompany him. I have seen everything you have said and done just now. If the Grand Secretary's testimony as a witness is not enough, I can also testify. This eunuch was the Emperor's chief steward. He had served the Emperor for nearly 50 years. No one was more trusted by His Majesty. Now, Wei Heng had nothing left to say. In a desperate move, he turned and grabbed my wrist. Qingsai, for the sake of our many years together, help me this once. Just tell the steward that you were willing just now, all right. I violently shook him off, looking at him as if he were an idiot. Wei Heng, am I insane? Why would I sacrifice my own innocence to help you? The three members of the Wei family were taken away by the imperial guards. Marrying Meng Ruoyan was scandalous but not criminal. But imprisoning me, colluding with a high official to slander an innocent woman, and Wei Heng's attempted rape were more than enough to land them in deep trouble. As expected with the testimony of the Grand Secretary, his wife, and the chief steward, the verdict for the Wei family came down quickly. Wei Heng was sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in the northern frontier. His parents, for failing to raise their son properly and aiding his crimes, were sentenced to 5 years in prison. The family's noble title was stripped, and their assets were confiscated. The once illustrious Marquis' manor was sealed overnight. On the day of Wei Heng's exile, King Yin and I went to watch. When the disheveled Wei Heng passed by us, he looked up. The calculating light in those eyes, that had been deceitful for 3 lifetimes, was gone. All that remained was unwillingness and hatred. He opened his dry lips and asked only one question, Why did you harm me? King Yin couldn't be bothered with him and turned her head away. To let him die with the truth, I answered calmly, Because if we didn't harm you, you would have harmed us. He seemed to want to ask more, but a guard kicked him, giving him no further chance. As we were about to leave, King Yin nudged me. Sister, look. A figure was huddled in a corner, shivering. It was Meng Ruoyan. Normally, with her husband's family fallen, our Shen family, as her maternal family, should have protected her. But the erotic painting of her and Wei Heng had circulated among the public. The Shen family found a legitimate reason to sever all ties with her. She had wanted to return to her old profession in a brothel, but her reputation was so foul that even the brothels, which specialized in the flesh trade, refused to take her. She had become a stray dog. During the day, she begged with her face covered. At night, she huddled with beggars in a dilapidated temple for shelter. I felt no pity for her. My father had paid to free her from her old life, and had treated her well. But after investigating, we learned that not long after entering our home, she had betrayed my father and started an affair with Wei Heng, who was 5 years her junior. This ending was her just deserts. Let's go, there's nothing to see. I took King Yin's hand and turned to leave. The gloom that had weighed on my heart for 2 lifetimes finally dissipated at that moment. A month later, the Lin family welcomed King Yin and me. Facing husbands we barely knew, both King Yin and I were understandably nervous. But the 2 Lin brothers said, one after the other, "It's all right if you don't know us well. We can wait." The elder Lin brother gently took my hand. "King Sai, I've been waiting ever since I first saw you when you were 8 years old." The younger Lin brother, copying his brother, said with a blush, "King Yin, I was there the day my brother met your sister. But I liked the 6-year-old you even more." Hearing this, King Yin shot me a triumphant look. "Sister, I win this time. Someone liked me when I was 6, but you had to wait until you were 8. I rolled my eyes in exasperation. "Do you have to compete over this too?" King Yin reverted to her old arrogant self. "Of course, why not? We've been competing for lifetimes. It would be so boring if we suddenly stopped."